we're just going to jump right into it. Everyone, we all know Wayne Chandler. I'm Jamila, the Winged Alchemist, and we got Michael joining us here today. We just wrapped up the Alchemy of Inner Empowerment retreat, training, transformation container. But my first question to you, Wayne, this is pertaining to myself. How would you describe your experience working with me during this retreat, and I guess the approach that I bring to just the entire retreat in terms of my transformation approach? Like, how did that mesh well with what you're bringing to the table? And really just give me your feedback. I'm open to all the positive and all the room for improvement as well.
Yeah, I thought it was a great integration. It was a fantastic mix, and the level of responsibility outside of just what we were doing with respect to practices was also commendable. And you were the glue that made things go and kept things together. You started us off in the morning with the yoga, and that was essential because that conditions the body for the other practices that we would do later during the course of the late morning and afternoon. Just the evening sessions that we did after we would activate certain centers, mind, body, practices that we were doing, and then how you would take us into the dynamics of self-hypnosis to go in more fully, more deeply, to transform what it was in terms of the energy that we had collected during the earlier part of the evening or afternoon. So there was a lot of fluidity that manifested itself in productivity, and you did an awesome job.
I appreciate you. It's an honor to do this with you, first of all. I guess the question would be, how did you know I was ready? And you've got so many wonderful women who are like even further in their qigong practice or sexual cultivation and just consciousness expansion.
Yeah.
How did you know I was ready? I was the one.
Well, we had started doing some things a few years ago.
Yeah.
And in that, I gained some vibrational insight in terms of the person you were and just how you're driven to move and manifest and pull things together and make things work.
Right.
So I've always felt, that when you were ready, that you would be awesome in terms of like helping to facilitate this particular program. And so when you called and said, I'm ready to really like go full on into these internal practices. And I was like,
Yeah.
yeah, and that was a wrap.
Right.
Yeah.
No, I appreciate you. What would you say are like the 3 keys that you wanted everyone to walk away with from this retreat?
That they're way more, first key, they're way more than what they think they are, and that what they think they are, in concept is accessible to them, and that transformation is like right around the corner if you stay consistent, with the work that you're doing.
Yeah, very powerful. Just to expand on that first key, just as someone that talks a lot about reality creation, when he says like willing to stay consistent with it and transform, it's not just yourself. It's also what you experience in your outer world. It's what you attract. It's the opportunities that you create. It's the level of health that that your inner environment, meaning your body frequency, is at. It's like a multitude of things. So what's the second key?
The second key is, just dealing with the fact a lot of people don't really have an understanding, and those who supposedly are conscious, understanding of how the body works and how body-mind transformation is really activated when you do specific types of internal practice. Change must take place. And that's because of the design, of our cells and how our cells react to energy, especially energy or frequencies that they've never been in contact with before. They produce, create, manifest new belief systems, and those systems lock into higher vibrational frequencies, which allow a deeper expansion of consciousness and awareness, which helps you navigate the daily.
Yeah.
And we need a lot of help with that, just being in our daily regimen and being the master of that daily regimen as opposed to it mastering us.
Exactly. Facts. What would you say is the third key?
The third key, just...
I'll say it's the financial piece. For you, yeah. Just, because that was also a very important part of the retreat. But how does Qigong and just yoga and self-development and all that relate to finances and money and, where we're moving towards?
Yeah, because the whole key is that, you're designed to be a master of your own destiny. And so we're here to create what it is, that we wish to have, that we envision for ourselves. But we get stuck along the way, and we don't know how to get around those corners, or the obstacles that, society, culture puts in front of us, So when you start moving through the internal scape, the inner scape, of internal practices, you learn how to take things that are obstructions and dissolve them, or at least reconfigure them so that they're not in the way of what it is that you want to do. So the financial piece, is about awareness. It's first about knowing that this is something, you want to achieve, you want to acquire for yourself. And then there's steps that you go through to achieve and acquire that. But what becomes really imperative is just the research that you have to do to get to that place, and having a solid mind, body, spiritual foundation, which allows those kind of openings to take place and to magnetize to you the abundance and the availability of that abundance.
I have to agree to that, because I think what a lot of people don't realize are the things that we reject. Like he says, in order to master that space, you need to be willing to gain information, and if you're not aligned with yourself, you may not be open to the opportunities to receive that information, to then integrate it and act. But when you're moving from a place of, I guess, obedience to higher self, there is no limitation to information. You're going to see it, you're going to recognize it, and you're going to move towards it, especially if it resonates. I guess, I don't know. I guess I'm going to ask you a question, because, you're a part of this too. When he talks about, tell me about where you were just before you were introduced to Wayne, and based off of what he said, how has that impacted you?
Well, I come from a very religious come from a very religious background, and the point of religion is basically to pour your power into something else outside of you. And whether you believe that or not is up to you. But what I learned from Wayne and many others that speak like him is the power is within. Transformation is right around the corner because it is in your vessel. We are made to transform.
Yeah. What do you think was the most transformative or impactful moment for you in this retreat? And how do you think it may not shift your perspective or your energy moving forward, but what was the most impactful moment for you?
For me, it was just the receptivity and seeing the growth and the opening of everybody, you know, who was partaking of the practices that we did and the journeys that they embarked upon, you know, as they began to shift and change in terms of their energetic matrix.
Yeah. And what do you think something that we could maybe do better next time? What did you observe?
I think in terms of better, first, before I would go to better, I would think like consistency of what we're doing outside of the retreat.
Okay.
You know, to have that as a continuation for what we generated within the retreat so that when we come back together,
Right.
we're at a totally different level.
Right. Yeah, I just got chills. Yeah, exactly. Do you have a question maybe that comes to mind?
Your journey, because you've been on quite a journey yourself, you know, and maybe you want to like just kind of expound on a little bit of that because, you know, you've been at this, you know, for a minute, you know.
Little bit.
Yeah.
A little bit. So it had to be more than 10 years since I first sent my first message to Wayne on Facebook, and it was on my lungs are congested. What do you say? What do you recommend? You know, it's coming from a religious background. It can be difficult to be a spiritually aware person when you don't really have anybody to talk to. You don't have the environment that is conducive to spiritual growth. And I'm just so thankful that there are master teachers, historians, researchers, studiers like Wayne and his colleagues, because that made that avenue very accessible to me. Because I was in a place where it didn't look like there was any light, any chance to spiritually ascend. And so yeah, I have been on and off the practice. You know, starting from where I started, it is like I said, it can be difficult, but I never gave up. And just the way the practices were explained to me, it just really related to it really related to my consciousness.
Your vision quest.
Yes. And it's so plain. It is so plain. It's so simple to digest, to understand, and that is the path for growth. If it's too difficult, it probably has no value. And so through his simplicity and his message, it's the path is, I see the light at the end of the tunnel.
How, like, from 10 years ago till like where you were 10 years ago to where you are now, how has your self-concept evolved? Like, how do you see yourself, or how have you learned to know yourself or who you are?
Well, I stopped placing the blame on everybody else. If all is mind and universe is mental, that means I have more power than I gave myself credit for.
Exactly.
And relating to the practice, you feel that power in you. It's I've heard people call it scary because it's very, very powerful. There's very powerful vibrations and levels of consciousness that are inside of us, that we're born with, that we don't have to get from anywhere else. And you know, when you in a place like America, America, KKK, whatever you want to call it, the Babylon, it's much needed, but it's very rare to get true, authentic information about what's already inside of you. So back when 10 years ago, I was playing victimhood. This did this to me. Why did I have to do this, and that? Through the practice and through the education, I realized that my conditions were a reflection of what was inside of me. So that gave me the room and the opportunity to look what's inside of me and to work it out. And to know that it's possible to work it out. And that's what the practices have given me, that's what the understandings have given me, and that's what they continue to give me.
Yeah, that's very powerful. Yeah. I guess, I mean, the word that comes to my mind is like reality, because then the reality was, it's like everything is coming at you, but now that you've shifted, you know, how you see yourself, how does reality respond to you now?
Reality responds to me.
What does it show you about yourself, the mirror?
It shows me that I still have plenty of work to do.
Right, yeah. We all do.
But it also shows me that I have everything that I need, that I ever will need. It shows me that reality will shift based upon my internal reality. And it shows me the ability that I have to do that. And it shows me that the possibilities are endless. No matter what's happening around me, I will be good. And if you stick to the practice, it won't fail you.
Right,
and that's what it showed me.
Yeah. One thing I want to say is why I love Qigong, because I always talk about you know, just these limits that we are created in the subconscious, oftentimes passed down and we don't realize. And you know, there's only 3 ways to move energy, and that's through movement, sound, and breath. Breath first, but breath, movement, and sound. And Qigong is like all that together, and that's why I say, like, we time travel within our bodies, because I think our bodies are that time traveling device, because when you do all of that, you literally just shift into a different space-time, you know, period. I don't know how to call it, but I guess my question to you is maybe talk a little bit more about your introduction to Qigong as a yogi, and then why Qigong basically became like the
center of my that's a good question. I mean, I had started studying yoga and teaching yoga. Like, I started studying yoga like in 1970, and after a few years of that, I became a teacher in DC University, and I was teaching out of what was called the interdisciplinary science department. And back then, you know, like, yoga was the thing. This was before all of the other constructs were put in place, you know, that created, I guess, political and economic direction for yoga. And you know, we had our own yoga institute. We were the first group of blacks that had a yoga institute in America. And it was called Ananda Shanti, and this was in Washington, D.C. And I loved it. I mean, yoga was my heart. But what I discovered, and I would do things like go to the Caribbean, pitch a tent, be up in the mountains, training yoga,
Wow.
you know, and there was a vision that I had of where, not only where I wanted to go, but what I thought yoga could provide for me in getting there. And I could never get there. And so I was wondering, why couldn't I get there? And so then I came across Montauk Chia and his work. And he began to talk about the power of tongue connection. And then I began to see that there were certain bits of information that were kept from us. You know, that, we weren't really allowed to embrace, that would really further our development spiritually. And so I began, because there was a book, really it was a Swami, and if I can remember his name, Ramachakara, and he did a book called The Science of Breath. And it was a book that everybody who was on the path to expand themselves had. I mean, I had at least 3 copies because they kept getting away from me. But Yogi Swami Ramachakara had done The Science of Breath, and in that, when you went through the different pranayamic practices, you saw like a lot of depth and just equations, bioequations, organic equations, bioorganic equations for transformation. But when you did the practices, you didn't move. You know, so I just said something's wrong here, and I don't know what exactly it is. But that space was filled when I began doing Qigong and working with Montauk Chia. Montauk Chia like really revealed to me, you know, the different complexities, you know, that operate within the human body that allow energy and consciousness to intersect and create a level of expansion.
So I hear you a lot of times say, like, how are these cats doing Qigong and not doing tongue connection? I always hear you saying that. So maybe talk a little bit more about tongue connection and, you know, the importance of it, what it does, and why, if you're doing Qigong, you need to be applying it.
Well, really, yeah, and it's not even just Qigong, it's any kind of discipline that has an internal matrix to it. You know, like, you know, my brother from another mother, you know, Yasir Rahotep, he does Kemetic yoga. And one of the things that I always wrote him about was tongue connection. You know, and because it wasn't a part of his training, he would forget often, you know, to incorporate that into his teachings. Now he's got it, you know. But in yoga, there's a book called the Yoga Pradikapa. Yeah, the Yoga Pradikapa. And the Yoga Pradikapa has probably the most extensive chapter on what's called Kachari Mudra that you're going to find. And Kachari Mudra is tongue connection. And it's just something that even in the yogic practice, every yogini and yogi should be applying tongue connection if they really want to move forward in their practice. And when you talk to yoga practitioners,
Mm.
yoga teachers, they know nothing about it.
Mm-hmm.
And if you talk to yoga masters, they don't want to talk to you about it. You know, so the dynamic of Kachari Mudra or tongue connection is that it creates a fusion and connection of the various circuits that channel life force energy throughout the entire body mind,
Mm-hmm.
and allows one to take that energy and infuse that into a greater, deeper understanding of what it means to be on the spiritual path.
Mm-hmm.
And you're going to find, you know, it's fascinating because you're going to find in yoga, you know, masters in the science
Mm-hmm.
that really try to keep you away
Yeah.
from utilizing Kachari Mudra. And you're going to find the same thing in the, you know, Qigong traditions or
Right.
Taoist traditions. You're going to find the exact same thing. You know, I sit and I listen to some Qigong practitioners talking about, you know, the microcosmic orbit, for example.
Mm-hmm.
And they really frown upon using tongue connection to be and create those kind of states,
Mm-hmm.
you know, where consciousness expands and takes you into different timelines and,
Mm-hmm.
you know, profundities,
Right.
you know. And it's baffling to me because, like in medical Qigong, of which I've also studied, what makes medical Qigong effective and work is tongue connection.
Right.
It ain't going to work without tongue connection.
Right.
So my thing is, how can you have, you know, some level of like adverse perspective around something that imparts life
Right.
to you? I don't get it. You know, the last time I was here in Costa Rica, I was doing a retreat on the other side of the country, on the west side, on the Caribbean side. And the brother I was working with at that time was a brother named Purusha. And one of the conversations that we had, because I asked him, why don't you use tongue connection?
Mm-hmm.
Now, he studied with who we know as Alice Coltrane.
Mm.
And I cannot remember right now her yogic spiritual tag, but you know, he studied with her, and he asked her about tongue connection. And what was really profound was that her teachers told her that tongue connection was not something that she should aspire to really put into her practice.
Really?
Yeah.
Why do you think that is?
Because I think those that are like in the higher ups, you know, they really don't want
Like
people.
want to gatekeep,
Yeah,
right?
exactly.
Yeah.
Exactly. And that was shocking to me,
Yeah.
you know.
So when you started doing tongue connection, what was like? What did you notice?
I noticed immediate connection,
Mhm.
change,
Mhm.
and the movement of energy
Mm-hmm.
in my inner body, in my
Mhm.
mind.
Mm-hmm.
And that confused me even more because then I was wondering, why aren't they teaching this?
Right.
And then I saw, you know, like, for example, Tai Chi.
Mm-hmm.
Tai Chi is just moving Qigong,
Mm-hmm.
but they don't teach tongue
And you
connection.
still don't teach it. Wow.
And so, like, I had a student in Annapolis, Maryland, and she began studying Tai Chi.
Mm-hmm.
Now, she knew tongue connection.
Mm-hmm.
So her teacher, you know, who was Western oriented, a
Mhm.
European,
Mm-hmm.
was teaching them Tai Chi without the tongue connection. And so Crystal was like, you don't teach tongue connection. Why is that? And so she said, I can't talk about that right now. Let's talk after class.
Really?
Yeah. And so after class, this is what she told Crystal. She said, I know tongue connection, but I was taught and told by my teacher, who was Asian, who was Chinese, never ever to teach tongue connection to my students.
That's crazy.
So that's, just one of the greatest secrets of transformation that has been removed and kept from those practitioners who really authentically want to move into a whole different spiritual space.
Right. Yeah, because I'm even just, in a second I'm going to ask you a question, but I'm recollecting last year, it was me, Benny, and Jasmine, and we were doing remote kind of healing, tuning into each of the energy, the chakras and stuff. And I remember it's like we were, reading your energy, and we felt it. And then the next time it was like, whoa, like it was like you went up like 5 notches, and we were like, okay, we really felt it this time. And you're like, I had my tongue connected.
Right.
And for myself, as someone who started out as a yogi and doing the stuff, slowly kind of, not to say wane off of it, it's something that I'll always do because it does help me to open up my channels. But the moment you connect the tongue, you can feel like it was like a door, like a closing of a circuit. You could just tell, and feel that energy moving through you, and how much more like your aura expands or tightens, or whatever the word is, but you can feel it. So I want to ask you, Michael, when did you learn about tongue connection, and what did you notice within your practice? Sorry.
So I learned about tongue connection the first lecture I watched of Wayne. And when I did it, see, by then I was, I've been introduced to, spiritual practices, spiritual information. I was meditating here and there, doing a little stretchings, doing little movements. But when I learned about tongue connection, my main focus was the opening of, my intuitive faculties.
Yeah.
And I immediately noticed that in between the middle of my eyebrows was thumping.
Yeah.
Because that was actually what really I knew the spiritual practices that I was being told were real, because I was learning parts of my anatomy that I didn't know existed. I didn't know there was an eyeball in the middle of our brain. I didn't know there was an energy center in between my eyebrows. And when I started doing these things with my tongue connected, it was proven to me that they existed.
Right.
And so, yes, that was, I learned it when I first heard of Wayne in his first lecture that I heard. And when I applied it, I knew it existed. I definitely did.
Awesome. I had a question. I guess because tongue connection leads into obviously the orbit, and of course you'd have to come to a retreat, or join in and whatever it is that one of us has to offer to really learn how to tap into the orbit. But how does the microcosmic orbit, let's say, improve somebody's, I don't know if the word is it could be health within themselves, it could be navigating this world that reality, a lot of us are, let's give the one thing that we all recognize is working the 9 to 5, hating going to work, not having energy, like, do you know what I mean, just not really liking the reality that you're present in. How does the microcosmic orbit and the activation through the the tongue connection improve, I guess I'll say help to shift the status quo?
Yeah, that's a great question. I mean, the microcosmic orbit is designed to really generate and move life force through the body. So when you connect the tongue, you're vibrating on a totally different level than you would normally vibrate on in 3D. So the purpose, of not just a microcosmic orbit, but just authentic internal practice is to shift one out of the three-dimensional construct into their natural fourth dimensional self. And this is what has been taken from us, is our existence and vibratory frequency in 4D, because in 4D we manipulate 3D at ease. I mean, it takes no effort. It takes only a thought to create a shift and a change in 3D if you're a 4D frequency. So dealing with the microcosmic, it's so multi-dimensional because it has its physical aspect in terms of what it does in building energy or life force, and then diffusing that life force energy into the various systems that operate within the human body. So glandular, organ systems, circulatory systems, all of those are impacted through doing the microcosmic orbit. The other thing that the microcosmic orbit does is that it takes energy and transforms just basic energy into usable energy that is just kind of hanging out and laying around in your body-mind. So what happens is that when you get deeper into the microcosmic, you'll be doing the microcosmic meditation, and all of a sudden you'll get this aroma of like apple pie or pumpkin pie or something that you have dealt with in like previous years, that you've completely let go of, forgotten about, and it just sits somewhere in the back of your subconscious, just sitting there taking up space. The microcosmic goes into those spaces and takes those thoughts and turns them into usable energy.
Yeah, so what do you use this energy for?
Spiritual expansion.
Okay.
Yeah.
So I guess one of my last questions, because I talk a lot about, like, on my channel, how, which I know you'll remember, like, the first two practices I was taught, I already knew alternate nasal breathing, but the kidney packing and the lung sound were probably the first two that I was working with. But doing that just, again, shifted my entire reality in terms of, got rid of my apartment. I was dating someone at the time that it wasn't aligned, and it really helped me to recognize that, let that go, decide, like, okay, we're in the middle of a pandemic. This is what's happening here in my country. Where should I go right now? And the answer was, let's go to, Ghana. That's how I ended up in Ghana, confidently, with no fear. So to bring that, into play, one thing that I'm noticing a lot, are people are having, like, a lot of kidney problems. I'm noticing a lot in my, like, people around me, kidney problems, liver, like, just a lot of organ, I don't want to call it failure because that's pretty strong, but disruption. And so can you maybe talk a little bit about maybe why that is right now in this time? Because, again, it seems like it's just multiplied, and how doing something as simple as microcosmic, or just, deciding to go the qigong route or the energy work route, how that would help shift, the experience happening in the organs, because I think a lot of people are suffering with that now.
for sure. A lot of it comes through our daily habits in terms of how we're living our life.
Mm-hmm.
It comes through a lack of dietary awareness.
Mm-hmm.
You know, when you look at your filtration systems, those are the systems you really, really have to pay close attention to, because the responsibility of those systems is to remove toxic debris and material out of the body.
Mm-hmm.
And so once they become clogged and congested, you know, on the physical level, then, you know, you're in a place where dysfunction is inevitable.
Mm-hmm.
And I mean, it's rampant right now in our culture. You know, kidney and liver disorder is rampant. And then you have to go into like the deeper energetics. So for example, every organ in the body has an emotional affiliation.
Right.
So the emotional affiliation for kidney is fear. And so you have to look at how much fear is heaped upon us on the daily, because that's one of the main emotional fields that stops us from progressing and moving forward and achieving oneness and the things that we want to acquire in our life. It's fear. You know, fear immobilizes us and stops us from achieving greatness.
Right. Yeah. Yeah, that's a good point. And just to tag on the back of that, the I guess the vice of the liver.
The liver, because then we get angry because we
Exactly.
can't
'Cause we
achieve what
can't.
it is that we want to have.
Exactly.
And the liver, you know, its emotional correlation is, you know, to anger.
Right.
Yeah.
Yeah. So doing the practices just really helps to, again, transmute that, as he said, into usable energy towards the things that you really want to create. And that's why we bring in alchemy, because that's all that it is. It's mental, spiritual, and physical alchemy. And to do all of that brings empowerment, hence alchemy of inner empowerment. So I will ask you, what's next for you in terms of alchemy and inner empowerment? What is something that, you know, people should be looking for next in terms of your creation, aside from Ancient Future? If you haven't read it, get it. But yeah, what's next for you?
Really beautiful and great and empowering things, you know.
Like that.
You know, we're looking to do some more projects, you and I, you know. Our next project is going to be in Belize. And we're also looking at another really major project, which will be in Cambodia. You know, so it's always great to find these places where the energy is just overwhelmingly productive, you know, and penetrating in terms of the frequencies that it delivers and brings to the practitioner. You know, so we're going to be like lit up when we go to Cambodia. I mean, because that's one of the main power spots on the planet in terms of the vortexes, you know, the alignment of the meridians or ley lines, as they're referred to in the scientific community.
Yeah. I just have to say, like, I love you. I don't know, I guess that's it. I love you. I appreciate you. Even when you met my aunt, that was the first time me meeting my aunt, you know, last year in Jamaica. But she was like, because you remind me of a family member. Like, and even she was like, you know, he kind of, you know, seems like family too, saying that to my mom. But even just to mention how I even met you, I didn't know who Wayne was at all. And I just happened to end up randomly at I don't even know the girl, but this girl in Toronto was doing
Yandea.
yeah, oh, yes,
Yeah.
the idea, yes. She was doing something somewhere. It was like I don't know if it was a retreat or what, but we were
It was
somewhere.
a retreat in Toronto.
Yeah, and it was Brother Victor who just was like, hey, you want to go to this yoga thing? And I was like, okay, I got 2 hours. And I went, and, you know, we sat down, and this man, like, glided into the room as he does. He just just glided in, and I said, okay, you know, and I'm still thinking, like, okay, I got about 30 minutes. And I don't know what we did, but we went into maybe a little meditation or breathing, and I had already been practicing yoga. So, of course, you know, I went into my stance, did my thing, and Brother Victor was like, okay, it's time for him to go because he was on a limit. And I was like, okay, you know, wait for me, because we were in, like, I don't know, Scarborough or somewhere. And I just remember I was just about to get into the car, and Wayne was like, I noticed your surge of energy. And I was like, okay. Like, I was like, yeah, I do. You know, I've been a yoga teacher, and, you know, and then we just kind of kept in touch from there. And that was 2019. I'm pretty sure that was 2019, maybe 2018. I can't remember.
Yeah, probably 2018, because it was definitely before we stepped into the age of COVID.
Right.
Yeah.
Right. But it was 2019 that I actually started.
Right.
We started doing, like, Zoom calls at that point. Prior to, we were just kind of emailing.
Yeah.
But yeah, I'm just grateful, you know, to the universe. I guess to my own energy, you know, for attracting this, to bringing this into fruition, and for it to be however many years later, and now we're, you know, collaborating together. I'm just very grateful to you.
Yeah, that's a door that swings both ways.
Yeah.
You know?
Yeah. Michael, any questions? Any final, you know, words? Anything you want to say to the people?
Well, yeah, it's as we said many times before, transformation is meant for everyone. We are genetically encoded to transform. Animals have their superpowers. You have hawk eyes, you have dogs with incredible scent. I believe our superpower is the ability to evolve, to control our evolution. And it doesn't not get any simpler than this. And the energy is here, and it's up to you to go through that journey. You are your biggest obstacle, but also you are your biggest victory. So I am also very grateful to these two. The retreat was very powerful, and it was thanks to both of their energies. Simple to understand, practices very powerful, and the structure was impeccable. And yeah, it's up from here. That's all we can do. It's up from here. So I want to thank both of you, honestly, for all of the information and energy that y'all have shared with me, honestly.
Yeah. Thank you for being here.
Being there.
Yeah. I mean, with that said, it's a mic drop from here. It tabs me. Cool. Solid.